What if the noises in the hallway, the strange shadows in the darkness, and the terrifying figure watching your family aren't ghosts trapped inside your home, but something that has followed you from somewhere much worse? That's the nightmare at the heart of Insidious, the 2010 supernatural horror film directed by James Wan. And this isn't just another haunted house movie. Today we're going to look at what makes Insidious one of the most effective supernatural horror films of the 2000s. The story follows Josh and Renee Lambert, a young married couple who move into a new home with their 3 children. Not long after settling in, strange things begin happening around the house. But the real nightmare begins when their young son Dalton suddenly falls into an unexplained coma. Doctors can't find a medical reason for his condition. And then the family starts experiencing increasingly disturbing supernatural events. As the haunting becomes more aggressive, Josh and Renee discover that Dalton's condition may be connected to something far more terrifying than a normal haunting. To save their son, they must uncover the truth about what is happening and enter a world that exists far beyond the boundaries of their own home. At the center of Insidious is Josh Lambert, played by Patrick Wilson. What makes Josh interesting is that he isn't introduced as a typical horror movie hero. He's a father, a husband, a man who desperately wants to protect his family despite his own faults and failures. And as the supernatural events become more intense, Josh gradually becomes one of the most important pieces of the mystery. Patrick Wilson plays him with a restrained quality that works particularly well during the quieter moments. He's not constantly screaming or panicking. Instead, there's a growing sense that Josh knows something is wrong, even when he doesn't completely understand what it is. And that uncertainty makes him believable. Because the scariest thing about the situation isn't simply seeing a ghost. It's realizing that your child may be trapped somewhere you can't reach. Renee Lambert, portrayed by Byrne, is a devoted mother and wife who becomes increasingly terrified as her family encounters disturbing supernatural events. Byrne brings a powerful mix of vulnerability, fear, and determination to the role, making Renee one of the film's most memorable characters. Without getting into major spoilers, Insidious gives us something much more interesting than a single conventional horror villain. The supernatural threat feels unpredictable, because the film gradually reveals that there are forces at work that the characters don't fully understand. And then there's the lipstick face demon. That character has become one of the most recognizable images from the franchise. The design is simple, but incredibly effective. Red face, black eyes, disturbing grin, and an almost theatrical presence. But what's important is that the movie doesn't immediately explain everything about this entity. It lets the mystery build, and that uncertainty makes the antagonist much more frightening. As for performances, Patrick Wilson and Byrne are excellent at grounding the movie. Byrne, as Renee, sells the emotional terror extremely well. Her character isn't simply frightened by strange noises. She's watching her family fall apart, while nobody seems capable of explaining what's happening. That gives her fear an emotional foundation. Lin Shaye also deserves special attention as Elise Renier. She brings a completely different energy to the film. When Elise enters the story, the movie suddenly feels like it has a better understanding of the supernatural world. She's confident, knowledgeable, and strangely comforting despite the terrifying circumstances. And that's one of the smartest casting choices in the film. The screenplay by Leigh Whannell understands something extremely important about horror. You don't need to explain everything immediately. Insidious slowly introduces its mythology. First, something feels wrong. Then we discover that the problem is bigger than the house. Then the film begins expanding the mythology even further. That progression keeps the audience curious. The movie also understands how to create escalation. Each supernatural event feels like another step towards something worse. And although some of the exposition becomes a little heavy later in the film, the underlying structure is strong. The dialogue isn't particularly flashy. And honestly, that's a good thing. Most of it exists to establish relationships, explain the supernatural situation, or move the story forward. But the emotional conversations between Josh and Renee feel believable. The dialogue works best when the characters aren't explaining horror mythology and are simply reacting to what is happening to their family. It's straightforward but effective. The cinematography is where Insidious really starts to separate itself from many conventional haunted house movies. James Wan understands how to make ordinary spaces feel threatening. Hallways, bedrooms, doorways, dark corners, empty rooms. The camera frequently makes us wonder what might be sitting just outside the frame, and that's an important horror technique. Sometimes what you don't see is scarier than what you do. The film also uses lighting and color to create an unsettling atmosphere. There are moments when the movie suddenly shifts into much darker, stranger visual territory, making it feel less like a traditional haunted house story and more like a nightmare. And when it comes to horror elements, the movie uses jump scares, but it doesn't rely exclusively on them. It builds tension first. A character walks into a room. We know something might be there. The camera holds. Nothing happens. And then, the movie hits you. But one of the most effective techniques is sound. The soundtrack and sound design can make ordinary noises feel threatening. A knock, a whisper, a sudden movement, silence. Then something completely unexpected. The movie also uses visual reveals extremely well. Sometimes a figure appears in the background and you don't immediately notice it. And when you finally realize what you've been looking at, it's already too late. One of the most interesting ideas in Insidious is the concept of the further. Without spoiling the story, this supernatural dimension gives the movie a much larger mythology than simply a family is being haunted. It allows the film to explore a genuinely unsettling idea. What if consciousness could travel somewhere that humans were never supposed to visit? The further is visually disturbing because it feels disconnected from normal reality. It isn't just dark. It feels wrong, and that distinction matters. And then we have the ending. I'm not going to spoil what happens, but I will say this. The final moments of Insidious are disturbing for a reason. The movie spends much of its runtime making you think you're trying to understand the haunting, but the ending forces you to reconsider what you thought you understood. It's not simply a final jump scare. It's the kind of ending that leaves you sitting there thinking, wait, what does this mean? And if you're watching it for the first time, I strongly recommend avoiding spoilers before you get there. So, what's our final verdict? Insidious isn't perfect. Some of the exposition can feel a little forced, and a few of the supernatural elements become more elaborate than necessary. But the film succeeds where horror movies really need to succeed. It creates fear. James Wan combines atmosphere, sound design, strong performances, unsettling imagery, and well-timed scares to create a movie that knows exactly how to manipulate its audience. And most importantly, Insidious has an identity. It doesn't feel like another generic haunted house movie. It takes that familiar idea and expands it into something much stranger. Insidious is creepy, atmospheric, unpredictable, and genuinely disturbing. If you're a horror fan and somehow haven't seen it yet, this is absolutely worth watching. But what do you think about Insidious? Did it actually scare you, or did you see the twists coming? And most importantly, what did you think about that ending? Let me know your rating in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more movie reviews, horror breakdowns, and discussions.